In the flat Earth model, the sun and moon luminaries revolve around the Earth once every 24 hours for the sun, and approximately 25 hours for the moon, illuminating like spotlights the areas over which they pass. The sun's annual journey from tropic to tropic, solstice to solstice, is what determines the length and character of days, nights, and seasons. This is why equatorial regions experience almost year-round summer and heat, while higher latitudes north and especially south experience more distinct seasons with harsh winters. The heliocentric model claims seasons change based on the ball Earth's alleged axial tilt and elliptical orbit around the sun. Their flawed current model even places us closest to the sun, 91,400,000 miles, in January, when it is actually winter, and farthest from the sun, 94,500,000 miles, in July, when it's actually summer throughout much of the Earth. They say due to the ball Earth's tilt, different places receive different amounts of direct sunlight, and that is what produces the seasonal and temperature changes. This makes little sense, however, because if the sun's heat travels over 90 million miles to reach the ball Earth, how could a slight tilt, a mere few thousand miles maximum, negate the sun's 90 million mile journey, giving us simultaneous tropical summers and Antarctic winters? Thomas Winship said, "The Earth is a stretched-out structure which diverges from the central north in all directions towards the south. The equator, being midway between the north center and the southern circumference, divides the course of the sun into north and south declination. The longest circle around the world which the sun makes is when it has reached its greatest southern declination. Gradually going northwards, the circle is contracted. In about 3 months after the southern extremity of its path has been reached, the sun makes a circle around the equator. Still pursuing a northerly course as it goes round and above the world, in another 3 months the greatest northern declination is reached, when the sun again begins to go towards the south. In north latitudes, when the sun is going north, it rises earlier each day, is higher at noon, and sets later, while in southern latitudes at the same time, the sun as a matter of course rises later, reaches a lesser altitude at noon, and sets earlier. In northern latitudes, during the southern summer, say from September to December, the sun rises later each day, is lower at noon, and sets earlier, while in the south he rises earlier, reaches a higher altitude at noon, and sets later each day. This movement round the Earth daily is the cause of the alternations of day and night, while his northerly and southerly courses produce the seasons. When the sun is south of the equator, it is summer in the south and winter in the north, and vice versa. The fact of the alternation of the seasons flatly contradicts the Newtonian delusion that the Earth revolves in an orbit round the sun. It is said that summer is caused by the Earth being nearest the sun, and winter by its being farthest from the sun. But if the reader will follow the argument in any textbook, he will see that according to the theory, when the Earth is nearest the sun, there must be summer in both northern and southern latitudes, and in like manner, when it is farthest from the sun, it must be winter all over the Earth at the same time, because the whole of the globe Earth would then be farthest from the sun. In short, it is impossible to account for the recurrence of seasons on the assumption that the Earth is globular and that it revolves in an orbit around the sun." Gabrielle Henriette said, "The essential feature of the year is its division into 2 equal periods of 6 months, based first on the predominating length of the days over that of the nights, and vice versa, conditions which are governed by the varying hours of sunrise and sunset, and secondly, by the either high or low height reached by the sun in the heavens at midday. The first cycle, during which the days are longer than the nights, and the sun reaches its culminating point of the year, extends from the spring equinox to the autumn equinox, i.e. March 21st to September 22nd, and the second cycle, during which, inversely, the duration of the nights exceeds that of the days, and the sun descends to its lowest point of the year, extends from the autumn equinox to the spring equinox, i.e. September 23rd to March 20th. These 2 6-month periods are also characterized by an opposition of temperature. During the first cycle, which corresponds to spring and summer, the heat gradually rises and falls, while during the second cycle, which comprises autumn and winter, it is the intensity of the cold which progressively increases and decreases. If the Earth were truly a globe, the Arctic and Antarctic polar regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator should share similar conditions and characteristics such as comparable temperatures, seasonal changes, length of daylight, plant and animal life. In reality, however, the Arctic and Antarctic regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator differ greatly in many ways.
There's a vehicle on the pad the night of the launch. Unfortunately, you can't see the lightning and the rain. As we depart our quarters heading out to the pad, once again, it doesn't show, but it was raining cats and dogs. And I think each of us in the crew were not real confident that we were going to get off. Here's a picture in the cockpit before liftoff. That's looking over Richard's shoulder. And we got off a little bit late, but we did get to go. And the three main engines started just fine and were running very smoothly. When it was a little bit of vibration in the cockpit, the SRBs lit off and it became very bright, as you can see right here. It was just like day in the cockpit. And all during first stage, we didn't need lights in the cockpit. It was plenty bright. The vibration was pretty much like other crews have explained in the cockpit. During first stage, we were shaking around a little bit, but nothing you couldn't handle. And from reports that people on the ground, they got a pretty spectacular show. From inside the cockpit looking out, it looked like you kind of expect it to look like at the top of this. You were looking into a cloud with a bright light. I mean, it was just a glow all around the cockpit. And once we got up away from the ground a little bit, you couldn't see the ground anymore, and it just looked like you were in the middle of a glowing ball.
Which we were.
Which we were. You can see out the windows there. That's a sort of a representation. Here we're going through, well, you just went through the cloud deck there, which kind of reflected a little more light back in the cockpit now. This is just going through the cloud deck at about 20,000 feet. You can see the vibration isn't too bad, and we're all in there busily checking our instruments, being sure everything is running properly. The next scene you'll see from the cockpit is when the solid rocket boosters departed, and that was really a bright flash. And after that, there wasn't as much flashing or brightness in the cockpit until the external tank. There's the SEP with the SRBs. That's when those rockets push it away and it really gets bright.
Okay, once we got on orbit, the view from space was just spectacular, and this is just an indication of that just from the cockpit. One of the objectives of our mission was to deploy the INSAT satellite, and this is the cockpit arrangement associated with deploying the satellite. In this particular view, Dan is actually operating the 16-millimeter camera, panning the cockpit. You can see Dick over there on the left. He's sort of supervising the operation. There's Dale. He's going to be handling the cameras and the switches. And I'm working from the commander's seat up front, sending out commands through keyboard and talking to the PAM and a satellite through CRT display. You can see, as I said, that was basically our arrangement. Dan sat in the pilot seat during this operation, sort of monitoring the motion of the vehicle, making sure that it was steady and that there were very few vibrations of any sort. There's a picture of the INSAT actually being deployed from the spacecraft. You can see that the deploy went very smoothly. At the moment of deploy, there was a large thump, and as I said, the spacecraft was deployed very smoothly, and there was no vibrations or no precession of the satellite as it left the payload bay. Matter of fact, Dale pointed out that about a minute 20 seconds after deployment, you could see some of the jets on the spacecraft actually firing as part of the nutation control associated with the spacecraft. Another aspect of our mission was checking out the TDRS network. And so the shuttle flew various different attitudes during the mission, checking out the KU band. And this is the picture of the KU